In this tutorial, I'm going to jump away from photo retouching for a second and just show you one other image editing feature here in Photoshop called the Puppet Warp. So here I'm going to go to File and Open. In Chapter 9, I'll come down to folder 9.7, and I'm going to open up this little alien action figure here. And what I want to do is maybe change his pose a little bit, make him a little more menacing looking. So I want to change the pose of his arms, maybe tilt his head back a little bit, maybe give him an outer space kind of background. So I'm going to leave this guy here, and I'm going to make a brand new file for a background. I'm just going to go to File and New. Right up here, I can click Print. I'm going to set the width of my page to, let's say, 15 inches wide. I'll set the height to 20 inches tall. Make a big poster here. But for the effect that I want to show you, I'm going to lower the resolution down to 72. Okay, 72 pixels per inch is low resolution. That's monitor resolution. Images that you download from the web are typically 72 because you're viewing them on your monitor. The trick I'm going to show you will only work on a low resolution file. So that's why I'm making it kind of big. I'm going to click Create. Again, it's 15 inches. Make sure this is inches, not pixels. Okay, 15 inches wide, 20 inches high, 72 pixels per inch. Pretty decent size image. I'm going to hit D for default colors, and then I'm going to hit Option and the big delete key. I want to fill that layer solid black. Option and delete means fill with the foreground color. Black is my foreground. Okay, I'm going to make an outer space background from scratch, just from the void of space here. So with black and white, I'm going to go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And I'm going to crank this up maybe to around 75 or so. I'll keep it on Gaussian and, really important, monochromatic. If I don't, I'm going to get purples, greens, blues, oranges, yellows. I want monochromatic, just black and white. Okay, around 75, Gaussian, and I click OK. Here's what the noise filter does. It makes all these little random pixel values here. Okay, like dark sandpaper or a dark gray carpet. So what I'm going to do now is, with all this noise here, I'm going to go again to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. And I'm going to crank this way down to about 1.5. I just want a little bit of a blur to that, like a soft gray carpet. You can see if I zoom in again, now we have this kind of an effect. We don't see all those little squares anymore. Okay, but that doesn't look like outer space. Here's the trick. I go to Image menu, Adjustments, Levels. And what I'm going to do is squeeze my values together. So right here, this is the black slider. I'm going to drag it way over to the right till I see just a few little speckles here and there. And then I'm going to drag the white to the left to bring out a few stars. I'll drag the black over a little more, and there's our starry background. Random little elements of that noise. So now when I click OK and I zoom in, we've got these little stars off in our galaxy here. Okay, that's done. So I'm going to make a brand new blank layer by clicking on the sheet of paper, or the little plus here. I'm going to double click the name, and I'm going to call that Galaxy. And I'll hit return. But instead of black and white, I'm going to click on the black foreground and pick red. Right there. I have red and white. Okay, on this brand new blank layer, I'm going to run another filter. It's filter menu, render clouds. And I get this. Okay, but that just totally covered up my background, my stars. So I want to blend the clouds into the galaxy behind there, the background. So right above, instead of a normal flat cloud filtered layer, I'm going to set it to screen. So it kind of looks like semi-transparent, like gaseous. Okay. Now that I've got that cloud filter, it doesn't really look like a galaxy yet. I'm going to click on my red foreground and pick the opposite of red, which would be green. I'm going to make these colors kind of fight against each other. So now with green and white, I'm still on my galaxy layer. I go to filter, render difference clouds. And that's going to mix them up. Okay. What I've just done is applied, you can see it right there, difference clouds. And to reapply that filter again and again to swirl and swirl and swirl the clouds, on my keyboard on my Mac, I hit Command, Control key, and F. F for filter. Command, Control, F, Command, Control, F. And I'm going to hit that a few times until I get this kind of look. You can do it as many times as you want, but I like that. What I don't want to happen is I don't want to cover the entire surface. I want to kind of sculpt out a galaxy here. Okay, so I'm going to create a layer mask. Third one from the left, add layer mask. Every time you do, it is D for default colors, X to switch to black. And now with my paintbrush, I'm going to hold Control key and Option key, make a big brush, and I'll drag up to make a big, soft brush. Okay, what I want to do is maybe erase some of these clouds, but I don't want to erase it like this and just erase the whole darn thing either. So I'll go to Edit, undo that brush, and to sculpt out the clouds, I'm going to lower the opacity of my brush maybe down to about 30%. So I'm going to lightly scrape away these clouds. So now if I want this upper corner to be dark, I just click and drag, 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 drag. Maybe I'll sculpt out a little more darkness right there. Maybe make this corner go into there. Maybe bring out some of the space right in here. And we'll bring out a little more darkness down below here. There we go. So I want a galaxy kind of coming into formation like that. Okay, if I erase too much, like right here, I hit X for white, and I can paint some of that back in. Paint some of these clouds back in. Hit X for black and paint some of that out. But I can basically create my own universe, which looks kind of cool. Okay, so now I got that. Now what I need is my alien. So I'm going to click on the alien. I'm going to take my move tool and physically just move him up, all the way up. Wait a second, drag him back in and let go. And obviously he's way too big, so Command T to transform. I'll pull the corner down. So he's got a decent fit on the page right about in here. Okay, because we're also going to add his name across the bottom. So that's a good fit on the page right there. And I'll hit return. Okay, the next issue that I have is the fact that my galaxy has a lot of green, but so does this guy. And they're kind of fighting for attention when I have a green foreground and a green tinted background. So I want to change the color of my galaxy, even though I've already created the galaxy. So I'm going to click on the left side of this layer. Okay, the left side is the actual cloudy galaxy. Then I can simply go to Image menu, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and I'm going to drag my hue slider around just to see what a change will give me right there. That looks kind of cool. I mean, I definitely notice my alien more. Or I drag it to the right and go with more of a blue tinted purple. But yeah, I kind of like it to the left. I like that look. More of a magenta, reddish look. You can pick whatever you want, but I can easily change the look of my galaxy. Now I come back up to my alien. Okay, and what I want to do, like I said, is use something called the puppet warp to change his pose. So what I'm going to do here on the alien is go to Edit menu, Puppet Warp. And what that's going to do is drop a big net on top of this guy. You can see it right up here. There's a little button that says Show Mesh. Okay, by default, it should be turned on. Just for some reason, mine was off. But this is typically what you look like. Like you caught the alien in a net. Okay, this net is not going to help you. So I'm going to turn off the button that says Show Mesh. I do not want to show the mesh. I'm going to turn that off. What I'm going to do is, now that I am still in Puppet Warp mode, I'm going to treat this guy like a little posable action figure, which technically he was, or a posable mannequin, like you get those mannequins in your life drawing classes. They got all the movable joints for poses. This guy is the same thing. So what I'm going to do is go right into his neck and click. I'm going to put a little push pin, a joint right there. Then I'm going to put a joint at every shoulder. I'll put a joint on every elbow. I'll put a joint at every wrist. I'll put a joint at the top of his head right up here. And then, in order for him to not move around, because these things are going to flop all over the place, just like a cardboard cutout, like the cardboard cutouts you get at Halloween, you get a big skeleton, you pose it and you stick him to your door. I'm going to do the same thing to this guy. I'm going to stick him to the galaxy. Pin, 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 pin him down on the page. Just stick a bunch of pins in him. Like that. Okay, and what I can do now that I've added these little movable joints is, now I go to the one on the head, I click on it, and now I can move it. Okay, you want to move it slightly. You don't want to do this or this, even though you can. Okay, his head, I just want his head to kind of tilt backwards like, ha 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 ha, I rule the galaxy. There we go. We'll make him tilt his head back. I'm going to take this little pin and move his arm inward like that. We'll move this arm inward. Then, in order to raise his arms, I'm going to click this pin and shift click this pin so I can select two at a time and move the whole thing. Yeah! Photoshop rules. So put it right there. Then I can click this and bring it back a little more. Click the elbow, shift click the wrist and move that arm up. Then one click on the wrist and move that in. There we go. I can move his feet up a little bit like he's jumping. Shift click and move that leg up. Click and move this in. Shift click and move that up. He's kind of jumping around in victory here. And I like that. I like that pose. Okay, every one of these pins can be moved. I don't recommend it, but notice how I was able to just move his arms. These ones are kind of stuck in place. So it's good if you're using Puppet Warp, not only to add pins where you want to move him, but even more importantly, stick him to the wall in areas where you don't want to move him. Just pin him all over the place. Okay, if you accidentally add another pin and you don't like it, you can hold Option key and delete it. That's another way. But I've got enough pins in here that I like this pose. Maybe click and shift click and I'll move that arm up a little higher right there. And that looks good. I like that subtle change in his pose. So all I have to do now is hit return. I have to accept what I did. So just so you can see this, if you go to edit, undo, there's before, edit, redo, There's after. Okay, what I don't want this guy to do is just look like he's floating in space. I want to fade the bottom edges of this figure. So like I've shown you before, if you create a layer mask, third button from the left, add layer mask. It is always D for default colors, X to switch to black, and now to just fade his bottom half, I'm going to go to my gradient. Okay, here's my type tool. Right above that is my toning tools, my dodge and burn, and right above that is my gradient. If I click on the gradient, I'm going to look up here to this little pop-up. I want basic gradients, and I want to pick the first one, black to white. Okay, I can just click out here. That'll get rid of that little pop-up. And now if I start at the bottom like I've shown you before, if you click and drag a short line, you'll get a hard gradient. Drag a longer line, you'll get a smoother gradient. And drag a really long line, you get the spirit, or the spirit of this ruler, this galactic ruler here. So I can constantly change it, drag it a little less, drag it a little more, drag a little less, until I get just the right look that I'm going for here. Okay, and I like that. But notice now that we've faded out the bottom half, we got a big space, and I want to add this guy's name. You can name him whatever you want. All I'm going to do is hit D for default colors, switch to my type tool, and even though the foreground color says white, I look up here and this is still set up to do black type. So you got to make sure these two match. I'm going to click this button and make my type white. Click OK. And I want to center my type right here. For my font, I'm going to click this little pop-up over here and I'm going to come down to impact. Okay, if you don't see it near the top of your list, you can scroll down your list of fonts alphabetically, and I'm going to find impact right there. For now, you can choose whatever font you want, but I'll use impact for now because it's a bold, easy to see font. So go with impact. And then right here is the size of my type. I'm going to highlight that and type 100 points and hit return. So I had to start off with big type. Okay, centered type, it's going to be white, it's going to be 100 points, and it's going to be impact. I click, don't click and drag. I just click and type in whatever name you want this guy to have. So my guy will be called Zarlax. There we go, Zarlax. Maybe one less X. Okay. I go to my move tool. I can move this around wherever I want it to go. I can double click the T on the type layer. That will highlight it again. Highlight the size of the type and hit the up arrow key on my keyboard. I want to blow that up. 100 was still too small. Let's go something like that. And the more letters I have in the name, the smaller I'm going to have to make my font. So I'm going to come back in and edit this. Maybe take off one of the X's, one of the A's, and one of the R's. That way I have room to highlight this, highlight the size of the type, and really make this big. Just hit my up arrow to increase the size. That fits pretty good. So whenever you're done, you go to your move tool, you can move this around, but that looks kind of boring. It's just straight across the scene. I want this to look a little more dynamic, a little more exciting for this victory shot. So right here on the T, I'm going to double click. And when you have type that is highlighted, you have this little bent arrow under the T. It's called Create Warped Text. So when I click that, I can come in and pick any one of these warping features like arc. And if I arc it too much, it's going to run right off the edge of the page. So I can slide that back so it has a little less of a bend to it. You can try these sliders and see what that does, or see what that does. Or you put it back to 0, see what this does, see what this does. You know, it has that sense of depth to it. It'll go a little bit more like that. You've got all these. Arc the lower part of the letters, arc the upper part of the letters. You can play around and do whatever you want to your type. It's your design. I'm just going to go with my little arc right there. And maybe a little bit more of a bend. That looks good right about there. And I'll click OK. Go to my move tool. I like how that's looking. But I want it to be even more dynamic. This is just flat white type. It's not the most interesting. So to the right of my layers, I can double click to bring up my layer styles. Okay, I want my type to look a little more dimensional. So I'm going to click bevel and emboss. Remember, always click the name of the effect, not the checkbox. Because see, when I click that, all my buttons over here have changed. So now I want to add an emboss. We'll do a chisel hard edge. I'll set the depth up a little higher so we can see that kind of beveled edge. That's going to look good. Let me add a contour. Click on the word contour. Now I've got this little pop-up right here, and when I click, it adds more details around the edges. I'll just try each one to see what they do. I kind of like that, like a little inset to the letters. Looks kind of cool. Let's see, I can add a texture to it, but I don't really like the textures that come with this new version of Photoshop. Like, wow, tree textures. How stupid. Maybe one or two. Let's see, tree textures. Let's see, grass. That one actually looks pretty decent. It's like stucco on the side of your house. I can set the scale of that texture to have just a few little creases in it or a lot of detail in it. Might blow it up a little more so it's just a few little scratches in his name, like battle damage right there. Looks kind of cool. I have depth. I can drag to the right and really make it show up. Drag to the left and just barely show that texture because I still want people to be able to read the name. And let's see what else I can do to make my type stand out. I'll click on the word stroke, but I don't want my stroke to be yellow. I want to make it down to black. I'll put the position of my stroke outside the type, and I will make it even thicker, like really give it this bold look for a galactic imperial ruler here. Let's see, I'm also going to come down and add a gradient overlay right on top of everything. So here's my gradient. I have green to white, or I've got some blue gradients here. Let's see what those are. Blues don't really fit with this guy. So let's see what the greens look like. That one might look cool. Yeah, there we go. Okay, greens in my gradients. Pick whatever you want. You can pick oranges, reds, pinks, cloud, iridescent, whatever. But I think green kind of goes with this alien's green skin right there. So I like how that's looking. I'm going to add maybe a drop shadow to my text. And I can set the distance off so you can see it starting to peek out from below. I can set the spread, which gives it a harder edge. I can add the size, which gives it, to the left, it's a hard, like traditional old school drop shadow. The size just makes it softer and softer and softer. So I kind of like that. And what the heck, let's give it an outer glow. Let's just throw a bunch of stuff on this thing just to see what it does. I'll click on outer glow as well. Instead of a glow being black, because this already has a black outline, I'll make my glow white. White does not show up in multiply mode, so I'll set that to screen mode. And if I can't see the glow, it's because it's kind of hiding underneath this stroke. So I'm going to set it to spread out a little further. There we go, and adjust my size. So now we've got Zarlax, sax, 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 sax. Okay. White really doesn't go with the rest of my image here, so I'm going to click that and maybe make it a yellowish green. Kind of go with that type. That is looking cool. I like that look. And I'll click OK. There we go. We got Zarlax, Galactic Photoshop Ruler, reposed with the Puppet Warp, creating galaxies, whole universes from nothing. You have the power of creation here. So I'm going to save this file as Puppet Warp. I don't need the original Puppet Alien. I want this Puppet Warped Alien, whatever his name is, whatever you want him to look like, whatever galaxy you choose in the universe. But show me that you know how to repose with Puppet Warp. Show me you know how to warp text. Show me you know how to combine effects. Show me you know how to build a galaxy with the power of creation here. And above all, like always, have fun. I look forward to seeing what you come up with.